when I look at the research, it's staggering, right? I mean, I lost from my heaviest, like 150 pounds. I've been able to lose all that weight and keep it off for over 17 years now. That's because I've cultivated the values. What does the person that gets that result, what did they do every day? What actions did they take? And then you commit to being that person even before you've achieved the result. The mindset has to shift into that identity before you're going to achieve that result.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. Man, do I have a cool episode for you like right now. So it's super cool. I actually just finished an amazing interview with his name's Steven Thibert. So Steven is actually one of our newest assistant coaches on my coaching staff. Steven is an integral part of my team. Is doing an amazing job with our clients and is just crushing it along with the rest of my coaching staff. But a lot of you guys aren't as familiar with Steven. Like I know on the podcast we've had, like Grant has been on a bunch, Abby's been on a bunch, and over time I'm wanting to get my entire coaching staff on so you guys can really get to know them more and see a little bit more into their lives and kind of their brains and all of this. I just think it's a little bit more valuable because a lot of you guys go from the podcast and end up applying for coaching. But I think it's really helpful that you get a little bit of a feel for each of my coaching staff members. That way you get a really good feel for what's going on. Now, today I interviewed Steven. Steven has some really, really cool life experience with his stuff because prior to coming on board with us, Steven has been coaching for like a decade on his own, but then also he has gone through the most insane weight loss transformation of his own. Steven has lost over 100 pounds on his own, and then now is helping other people do that, but within our coaching community, which is amazing. I knew from the very first time I interviewed Steven that I was going to be hiring him and he was going to be coming on board. He's an absolute culture fit. He's an amazing dude. He's a great father. He's got a little man at home and is just an integral part of the team now. But I wanted to get him on and to talk about some of his perspectives because, like, being honest with you, I have not lost that much weight personally, right? Not as many people have been able to lose 120 pounds plus going through the trenches on their own. So I think there's a lot of valuable insight where Steven has going from being in the trenches of having done that himself to now on the other side, helping coach people through that too. So that's what we're going to get into on today's episode. Now, before we get into all the goods of the episode, huge thank you to the sponsors of the show. Sponsor number one is Flex Pro Meals. Right along the lines of weight loss, it makes things quite a bit easier when you don't have to cook all the time. For me, I use Flex Pro as like a little substitute when I don't have time either to cook, we don't have meals made, we're between grocery trips, or I'm just running around like a chicken with its head cut off because that's how just life is sometimes, and we don't always have time to make food in that moment. So for me, having Flex Pro in the fridge, on deck, ready to go, where I love the meals. They taste amazing. They're high protein. They're dialed in from the calorie perspective. They were made by a chef and they come to my door every month. It's just a no-brainer, to be honest with you. So if that's kind of something that you think would be beneficial to you, I definitely want to save you some money because they're already going to save you money from going through drive-thrus and gas stations and whatnot. But I want to save you an additional amount. So if you use my code HamiltonTrained, at their website, flexpromeals.com. It's in the description as well. You'll save an additional 20% at checkout, which is pretty cool. Then we have our second sponsor of the show. We have First Form. As always, I'm wearing one of their shirts because they're some of the most comfy clothes that I have. First Form is amazing, but you guys know that I talk about a lot that supplements are not everything. They are there to supplement and substitute holes in your nutrition that you are not getting with food. Because of course, if you're getting enough fruits and vegetables every day, you're good. If you're getting enough protein from actual food, you're good. If you're eating enough things like fish or other fatty foods that are going to give you like your omegas, you're good. But if you're having trouble with those areas, this is where we do want to use supplements so you don't fall short with vitamins and mineral deficiencies or your protein or your inflammatory stuff, anything like that. So that is why I partnered with First Form, because I want to make sure your guys' money is going to the right places where you're getting something of value that is actual high quality and going to help you, and that you're not wasting your money on stuff that isn't going to help you, that's either made in someone's basement or isn't the accuracy on the label and is not made the right way and things like that. I just want to make sure you're getting the best possible products you can. So that's why I work with First Form. That link is down below in the description. Definitely hit that and go see what they have to offer and see if there's something that you want to upgrade or start taking. If you have questions, I have my supplement video down there as well. If you're not sure where to get started with supplements, or just shoot me a message and I'll point you in the right direction. But otherwise, let's get into this episode with Steven. I know you're going to get a lot of value out of it because at the end of the day, a lot of people really don't quite understand like they approach it the wrong way, going from 20-pound weight loss to 120-pound weight loss, or their mindset is different, or they go about it the wrong way. And I think you're going to get a lot of value from hearing Steven talk about his journey. But then now that how we coach people that have that kind of weight to lose, I know you're going to get a lot of value out of it. Be sure and subscribe to whatever you're listening to this on. Leave us a review. And if you're into watching your interviews and would rather actually see Steven and I go back and forth, the interview is as well on YouTube. But otherwise, I appreciate you being here. I will talk to you in just a second. Well, dude, I know this is the first time you come in on the podcast. So for those listening, like I mentioned in the intro, Steven is one of our newest assistant coaches, and it's been fucking amazing. And which is why I wanted to get him on here to talk about kind of his perspectives on stuff. Because like that's the thing, dude, is you have a different perspective as a whole. Like everyone has a different perspective, but especially with your story around like losing over 100 pounds, now all the way from that to a coach to helping people with this stuff, your perspective and journey is a lot different than most people. Because you've seen it firsthand being in it, but now you're out of it helping people who are in it. So before we get into some of the tactics and strategy and all of that, just talk a little bit about like your story so that way everyone has a little bit more context, because you can tell your story better than anybody. So talk a little bit about kind of your journey with your weight loss and everything like that.
So yeah, I guess it starts when I was 16. So I was always kind of like the, quote unquote fat kid growing up, right? I started to put on weight when I was really young. I think of that was a lot of just parents not understanding nutrition well, a lot of fast food, a lot of processed shit around the house. And I think for me, this is why it connects so much with what we do in Hamilton Trained is like, for me, I was very emotionally shut down growing up. I don't know where that switch got toggled off, but was very emotionally shut down. And looking back now, I was very numb, but like I look back now and like realized that like food was like comfort for me, and that developed a lot of emotional eating behaviors and things like that. So anyways, by the time I was 16, I was 320 pounds. I didn't really have much zest for life. I was the kid, like I always say, like I pray my child doesn't end up like me with my parents, because man, I like challenged the fuck out of my parents. Like me and my mom would battle like every morning. Like I was the kid that missed like 60 days of school every year just because I hated school. Like I was very I was always like intelligent, but like then they tried to put me in like advanced classes, and I would like purposely fail the tests because I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to be like different. I just wanted to be like quote unquote normal or whatever. So, I'm 16. I hate school. I don't like going to school. I'm playing video games all the time. I started smoking weed with friends, so on and so forth. And just, again, no zest for life, right? No real want or desire to, really, I didn't know how to be happy, and I didn't really know all of the greatness that life entailed. So my mom, funny story, my mom caught me smoking weed when I was 16. And yeah, she found roaches in a coffee mug that me and some friends got super high on Halloween, and then
That's
like the next morning she dug in my car and like found it. It's like, what the fuck is this, And so that turned into this whole like my mom's brother was a quadriplegic, and he died of like basically an opiate like overdose because he was, the dude could only move his neck, right? So he was on all kinds of painkillers and shit like that from a work accident. And so my mom freaked the fuck out and was like, oh my God, my kid's doing drugs, smoking some weed. And so my mom sent me, her and her therapist at the time sent me to rehab in Montana, like legitimate rehab.
For
dude,
weed?
Yes. And we're talking like, it was like the number one rehab facility in the country. So like, I swear, I always say if I didn't have a solid foundation, I would have came out of that place a fucking drug addict, because I'm like, there's a dude from New York telling me he would like snort cocaine off a dashboard. There's one guy that said, hands down, crack is the best high. There's one guy that said his brain was fried from Coricidin, which is like cough pills. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah, and I'd never seen it in my life, but he had like delayed responses. Like you'd say his name and it would take him like 30 seconds to respond type shit. So it was nuts. So after 6 days, it was nuts, bro. And I won't dive too deep into that, but it was insane. So like, I'm like, I don't belong here. So I became the first person in like their 20 years to get like discharged, right? And after 6 days, so these guys wake me up in the middle of the night, right? The middle of the night. And I think I'm going home. I'm like, fuck yeah, these guys are going to transport me home or whatever. We end up driving like 10 hours to Idaho, and they drop me off in the middle of the fucking desert. And I'm like, what? Like, first they take me to the hospital for a physical. Then they drop me off in the middle of the desert, and like, they won't tell me where I'm going, right? That's like their whole job. They're like this logistics company that my mom had to hire. So lo and behold, my mom and her therapist decided, even though I wasn't this drug addict or didn't need the help with this, I was still had a lot of issues, right? In terms of like just non-compliance, like not,
Yeah.
just very rebellious, right? And so turns out I got enrolled in this program called SEUS in Idaho, which is like basically we like lived outside. You learn how to like live outside. I mean, by the end, I was like making fires with a bow drill type shit, right? But
Wow.
so like it was like we had to pack a 40-pound pack. You have to learn how to roll this pack, and then you sleep on the ground every single night, like under the stars type shit, right? Like you're literally sleeping on the ground with like a makeshift sleeping bag, dude. It was nuts, right? And so through that, we had to hike like 3 or 4 miles every single day. We're talking the fall, winter in the Idaho desert, which I didn't even know Idaho had a desert. So through that, I actually lost, and we're talking like no showers for like 40 days. I mean, it was
Dear
like
God.
it was like rugged, like crazy shit. They had to shut it down and reopen it under a different name because kids actually died. Like people actually died
Wow.
because of negligence of like their instructors or whatever. Anyways,
That's
because of
crazy.
it's nuts. Like that's a crazy story too. But that's kind of like the Cliff Notes version of that. But so like how this ties to weight loss is I lost like 40 pounds just hiking every day and on this very controlled diet, right? Where it's like, breakfast was like oats with you'd have to make oats. So you get this can of peaches and then you put your oats in there, your rations and water, and then you cook it on a fucking fire every morning. And they make you choke them down. Like I threw them up multiple times because it's disgusting, right? The oats that they give you.
Yeah.
For a long time, I had like this aversion to oatmeal. Now I love it, but I like couldn't eat it for years. Um, and so then lunch, they give you like pita bread with peanut butter and apricots so you don't get constipated. And then at night you make like rice and lentils, right? So I'm on this probably really calorie restricted diet, drinking a ton of water. But I lost 40 pounds in like 40 days, which
I
is
fucking bet.
yeah, which is insane weight loss, right? And when you have a lot to lose, sometimes it can come off quicker, right? And this was very controlled, mind you, right? Like it's not like I had access to snacks and shit like that, right? So anyways, come home, had lost 40 pounds, and my agreement with my parents, I was going to therapy at the time, is like you have to stay active if you're going to live in this house. And so I started going to the gym and I just started walking on a treadmill. And like in terms of nutrition, I had no guidance, no coach, but like I basically I cut it. So I made a few changes that I always say like can really have a huge effect. So like I cut out all fast food, which I was like a fast food junkie. So like to this day, I think I've eaten Chick-fil-A like once in my life, and like I like in the
That's the
last
Lord's chicken, bro.
hey, here's the thing. And I just I'm not against it. I just don't really like fast food. So like I've hardly eaten it the last 17 years. But so I cut out all fast food because that was like a big trigger for me, right? I used to just always be like a drive-through junkie, and then I cut out all like sugary sodas and then candy, and those are like the three things that for me just made sense because I didn't know anything about nutrition. So it's like, oh, these things are bad, stay away from them type mentality, right?
Diet culture stuff.
Exactly. And then just walking on a treadmill every day for like like a year, I had lost 100 pounds, right? And that was really like what catapulted the weight loss. And then I started to train with a personal trainer at the gym. I would do like a free monthly session or whatever, just getting into weights, like loving strength training, really finding that I like enjoy this. How do I build muscle type thing, right? I've lost a bunch of weight. And I got in a really bad car accident, right? I got T-boned in a Mustang that I had. And I didn't realize it like twisted my neck like this. So like when I went to do squats one day, I got these crazy like pressure headaches, right? And at that time, not knowing what I knew about strength training, I was afraid like I was going to hurt myself. So I actually fell away from the gym for like over 5 years and no exercise at all, and was able to like maintain the weight loss, right? So it was really just a principle of like just change. So a lot of what that is about, right? If we want to like dive deeper into that, I think it was really just about like once I made that commitment that I wanted to lose the weight, like once I got back home, I was like, oh, I'm starting to get attention. Like, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling lighter. Like I'm not going to be doomed to be, fat or obese all my life. Like I wanted to continue to pursue it. And at that point, once I had already lost that weight, I was determined. So it was kind of like that momentum just rolling, right? But we also talk about there were identity shifts that I didn't even realize I was making at the time, which was like committing to exercising X amount of times per week, committing to, keeping promises to myself in terms of not engaging in these things that were triggers for me at the time, right? So
No, that's huge, dude. I love that. So like, let me ask you this, knowing what you know now, like looking at old Steven who had the weight to lose, and let's say you weren't out in the wilderness eating gross ass peachy fucking oatmeal and sleeping on the ground and hiking every day. How would you go about it now? If knowing what you know now, if all of a sudden this Steven's head woke up on old Steven's body, how would you go about it now to lose the weight to get back to where you are here?
yeah, so I think the foundations really would be, because I'm such a big believer in it, I would be logging my food, right? I would definitely be logging my food every day. I would be making sure I was hitting a protein target because we know how much that helps. And then really I would just start moving my body, man. Moving my body. Those are like the two things in terms of like very strategic, like quantifiable things. And then obviously I would really just be focused on the mind game, right? Because if you say, okay, if I'm this person and I woke up in that body, I would still have this
Mentally,
like
you're the same person or the different
right, and
person still.
I would still have this identity, but a lot of
Yeah.
it is I would have to battle like those mental hurdles of like, because we all get frustrated if we gain weight or the scale's not coming down. We focus so much on that. Even when we've been coaching, it can still creep back up into our minds. So it's like keeping your mind right and playing the long game, I would say, would be a big part of that too.
Yeah, no, that's huge. On the subject of identity, right? Like that's a huge one. Like we talk about that a lot. We just finished the Jared's 12 Days of Christmas where we talked all about identity. So for someone who is in that situation, like right now, let's say they're listening, they're 100 pounds overweight, and because you said a couple things that really made my ears perk up under these headphones. When you said, I know I'm not destined to be this, I can change, and this is who I want to be. Like when you were talking about that, those were unconscious identity shifts. Those were, you saw this potential and you're like, I could be that. And then ironically, your actions aligned with that. So for someone listening, where does someone who has that much weight lose start with shifting their identity? Because we see people who have just 20 pounds alone have trouble shifting their identity, let alone someone who is 120 pounds or has 120 pounds to lose. So where would you start with how to get someone to shift their identity when they have literally the past, let's say 20 years of their life lived overweight and they have like that much weight to lose and they're feeling, because most people I know who have that much weight to lose, they have this almost hopeless feeling like that going through. They're like, man, I don't have just 20 to lose. I have 120 to lose. So like I could lose the 20, but it's like, why even bother when I have another 100 to lose? So where would you start with that?
Yeah, and I love that you said the hopeless piece, right, is huge, because what comes to my mind is like, and this is where kind of like I guess my path with clients that have that much weight to lose, what I really focus on now is like a lot of, I would say, I know when I was overweight and I run into when I am with someone who has a lot of weight to lose, one thing that comes up is like not a very strong like sense of self, not a very strong sense of like self-love, self-compassion. And I think ultimately like that's where lack of belief comes from. That hopelessness, that I can't do it mentality really comes from not having a strong foundation of self-love and self-compassion. And so I think that is really the foundation. Like if I notice a client is struggling with that, we put, everything else we're still doing as best as we can, but we really want to dial in on creating that self-love and self-compassion. One thing that you and I were having a conversation the other day, I think you said that Nick Ross said, is like, you could go to bed tonight and then wake up a different person tomorrow. I think
Mentally, yeah.
yeah. And so I think it's like that exercising that willpower of like, I want to change, I'm going to change, and I believe it, even if in the back of my mind is going to creep up and tell me I can't do it, I'm going to shut that down and I'm going to tell myself I can do it. It's like that conversation you and I had the other day. Even when I was a very negative, pessimistic person, which is another part of my journey, when I wanted to change my identity, I said, I'm going to replace every negative thought with a positive thought, even if I don't believe it at the time, because that track runs in your subconscious if you're saying that mentally, right? And so I think that's really where I would start if I was in that position again, is cultivating that really great sense of self-love, self-compassion, and go from there. But really, that's going to be the foundation to changing identity, I believe.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think a lot of people, though, have it in their head I call it a gatekeeper, that most people think they have to have a result, then the identity shift, right? I can't feel like the fittest, healthiest, best version of myself until the 120 comes off, versus it's actually the other way around. We have to say, no, that's the fittest, healthiest, best version of me. And then when your physical body isn't incongruent with that, when someone has 120 pounds to lose, but their identity is now, no, that's the version of me, that's when it really starts. Because having the identity shift first, then going after the result is way easier than having the old identity and then trying to white knuckle through that to get the result. Because again, that's what you said you did. You said you looked at yourself and you said, no, this is who I want to be. I could do that. That's a possibility. Like you saw the sight and you saw that version of you first, then went after it. And then all of a sudden it was much easier for your actions to be congruent with that version of you.
Exactly. And I think that's, when I look at the research, it's staggering, right? I lost over 120 plus pounds at the height of it. When I competed in bodybuilding, I was from my heaviest, like 150 pounds down. What's crazy is, like I've been able to lose all that weight and keep it off for over 17 years now, right? And the statistics are staggering on the amount of people that can actually do that. I think it's like really low. And how do they quantify these things? But they say it's like 5% or something like that, right? And I always look at like, that's because I've cultivated the values, right? I've cultivated that identity, and also my values align, right? My priorities are someone who takes care of their health, someone who strength trains regularly, right? And so these things just became a part of who I am. I thought, who is that person? What does that person do that has lost the weight, kept it off? What is someone that wants to build muscle, has built a lot of muscle? How did they do that? What actions do they have? And so I think you really have to think about a couple things in terms of reflection. You have to think about, what does the person that gets that result, what do they do every day? What actions do they take? Right. And then you commit to being that person even before you've achieved the result. Right. Because that the psychological has to come before anything else, right? The mindset has to shift into that identity before you're going to achieve that result. So,
well, no, you said one thing that was so profound. And this is, I think, a big reason amongst the identity stuff, why so many people struggle, and then why the people who succeed. You just labeled the fuck out of yourself. Because if we look at someone who's struggling, they have all these shitty labels that don't serve them. Oh, I'm never motivated. I'm not the kind of person that gets healthy. I'm not the kind of person that's consistent. Meanwhile, they like brush their teeth every day, right? Or they have all these negative labels. But we know, even in the world of persuasion, like if you read any book or study psychology when it comes to persuasion, if you can label somebody and then like really reinforce that label, behaviors unconsciously act towards that. So for example, you said, I'm the kind of person who strength trains. I'm the kind of person who does the things they said they would do. I'm the kind of person that invests in themselves. I'm the kind of person who spends their time wisely. I'm the kind of person who has high standards. Well, then all of a sudden, because if you believe those labels, you unconsciously act in congruence with those. But if we see the people that struggle, they go, oh, I'm always kind of lazy. Then they naturally unconsciously are lazy. When I first got into therapy, one of the first questions, because that my therapist asked me, she goes, did you have any labels growing up? Like, did your friends or family give you any labels? And ironically, a couple of the labels that I had growing up was you worry all the time. Or another one was, Jared's like a little Eeyore, like a little depressed Winnie the Pooh bear Eeyore. Jared's Eeyore. Jared's the little whatever. Well, then ironically, manifesting into my adulthood, guess who struggled with anxiety a lot? Well, because when I was a kid, I took on the identity of a worrier. This person worries. This person's always thinking worst case scenarios, because I took on that identity and that label because I believed it was part of me. The same thing with Eeyore. All of a sudden I was this emotional little kid who was always sad, always depressed, always like down in the dumps. It was because I took on the identity of these labels, because that's how we act in congruence unconsciously. If you can get someone to label something about themselves, you control that person, right? So the fact that you early on didn't identify and didn't say, oh, I'm a lazy person, I'm not the kind of person who breaks statistics. You said, I'm the kind of person who trains. I'm the kind of person who invests in themselves. I'm the kind of person who reads lots of books. I'm the kind of person who breaks statistics. And then it's no wonder that you acted in congruence unconsciously with those labels.
Yeah. And again, over time, it's like, over time, I just continued to realize where I'd gotten and that I wanted to stay there. And then it just continued to change. Because then I realized, even what's interesting is like, I unconsciously did a lot of these things, but like still had a lot of issues years later, right? When I got back into exercise after that 5 years off. And so then I had to even look further at other parts of my identity that I wanted to change. And I think that just kind of pinpoints the fact that like, you got to learn to enjoy the journey, and there's always going to be something to work on and something to develop, right? But creating that foundation of who you want to be, and then having that be like your North Star, like that's going to lead you. I think that's ultimately what leads you to success, but you got to enjoy the journey along the way.
I love, dude, that's so good. And I want to rewind it. I want to stay in that for a second. So with someone who has a lot of weight to lose, let's just use your example, like 120, 130 pounds. That's a long fucking journey, right? Like we're not talking about just like losing, like we say fat loss in general is going to be a slower process. But when someone has that kind of weight to lose, we're talking about a level of consistency for years, right? Like we know considered a more sustainable fast fat loss is right around that pound a week-ish mark. That's assuming things are perfect and don't have any problems. But let's say someone has 150 pounds to lose. Well, fuck, you're at 3 years right there. You know what I mean? Like if you base it off of that. So for someone who has a lot of weight to lose and you're saying, well, you've got to enjoy the journey. I want to know your opinion from someone who's been there. How can you enjoy the journey, and how do you teach that to say, enjoy the journey, when you're telling this person to buckle up for the next couple of years, right? So what are some ways that you were able to teach yourself to enjoy the journey, but now as a coach helping people to enjoy the journey?
Yeah, I think the key is have right. Don't let the scale have control over you, right? So don't let your happiness come from just seeing a number drop. Like I always talk with clients about if the goal is weight loss, I always say, let's focus on the actions, the behaviors, the habits that we know are ultimately going to lead you to the goal, but not necessarily just the outcome. Because when we focus on the outcome, that's where we set ourselves up for disappointment. So really, I would say, find things that bring you happiness and joy outside of just seeing your weight loss, right? Just seeing your weight go down. Because if that's where, and you talk about this a lot, but it's like, if that's where you base your happiness, like, guess what? After you lose the weight, you're not going to be fucking happy, because it's not going to bring you joy, right? Like you might have less health problems, but you're not going to be ultimately a happier person just because now you're this, smaller version of yourself or whatever, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, happiness is never outside of you. And the fact that when we do put it, like we see it in weight loss a lot. I'll be happy when I lose the weight. I'll be happy when I get money, when I have the kid, when I get the car, right? And that's always a big red flag. One thing I was studying, a lot of people who listen to the show know I just had one of my heroes on, Kyle Cease. Well, I've been also diving into, I'm a member on his site, his Absolutely Everything Pass. So I absorb a lot of Kyle's content. And one of the things that he said on a module I was watching the other day that I thought was brilliant is when you aren't in these good places, when happiness is outside of you and you don't trust yourself and all this, he goes, you're in a smaller level of fight or flight. So you're not a safe place to get results. Right. So like if you think about how the mind works and like how the brain as a whole works with like, it's just about self-preservation. When you're not happy and you're in this constant mini fight or flight and you don't trust yourself and you don't trust the journey and you're just like all over the place and you're in this small level of fight or flight, you are teaching your brain you're not a safe place to generate results, whether that be making money, losing weight, being happy, whatever it is, but you're teaching yourself you're not a safe place. This is why we need to start with, I'm happy now. And then now it's easier to lose weight. I'm happy now, then things can come to me. Because if you're in this mini fight or flight all the time, you're quite literally telling yourself at a subconscious level, you're not safe to generate results. And it's just one of the things on how that works that I never even thought about. Because if you're thinking about it, the way his analogy was, imagine you're trying to paint a painting, get creative, receive insights and paint something, but there's a murderer in your living room. There's a level, you're not going to be able to be creative. You're not going to be able to receive insight. You're not going to be able to receive the result that you're looking for because there's this part of you that's like, but there's a murderer in my living room. So if you view yourself as not safe, not dependable, not reliable, not good enough, you're not going to be open to seeing progress and to making results happen. It's just an interesting insight that I got.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think also like that just leads to lack of belief in self, right? Which is when you don't believe in yourself. I mean, it's like that old saying, it's like if you don't believe in yourself, how do you expect anyone else to, you know? And so I think you have to start with that foundation of belief in self, and that's cultivated through the inner work. And the beautiful thing is like the inner work is where, and working on yourself and personal development, you know, you and I geek out on this stuff, but it's like, you know, that's really where happiness is cultivated. And if you think about it, I love that you brought up fight or flight, because one thing that I consider is like I call it my self-care or stress relief hygiene, right? That every single day.
That's such a good way to put that. That's so good.
Yeah. And so like every day I meditate and every day I read. I at least do those two things. I'm this year, and especially going into 2023, I want to journal more because it's like one of those things where I do it a couple times a week. I could definitely benefit from doing it more. So I'm working on doing that more because I've always have profound insights when I do journal. And that's why we're such fans of it, because we see such a huge shift with clients, right? But those things in and of themselves, when you think about it, activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and relax, the rest and digest. It's like that other side of that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight that you just mentioned, right? So I always talk to clients about these are the things that activate that. And so if you think about it from just physiology for a second, it's like when blood pressure is coming down, when heart rate's coming down, you're feeling more relaxed. You're probably going to be a lot more fucking happy than when you're stressed out, when you're depressed, when you're anxious, because that's what's going to activate that fight or flight, right? So the things that I always talk about are going to bring that, and do bring that for me, is like meditation, reading, journaling. Yoga is another good one. Just going for a walk, like, you know, interacting with your dogs, your kids, whatever. I mean, there's so many things that we could list off, but I think that like having those things in your life every single day and making time for those things and making those a priority are going to, over time, bring you more happiness, especially if you're consistent with them. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I love the way that you worded that around like your hygiene, because if we treat it like any other hygiene, we don't let it get out of control. We brush our teeth every fucking day, twice a day, because when they're clean. Like, this is my one argument, or my one reasoning with a lot of this stuff is, we never let other areas get that bad. Right. But we look at weight loss. Someone may wait till gain 100 pounds before they do anything about it. Someone may have their someone may not do inner work until they're binge eating every day out of control. Or they may not do inner work at all until shit really hits the fan. But think about brushing our teeth. If you go to sleep at midnight, brush your teeth, wake up at 8 a.m., you brush them again, nothing happened in the middle of the night. Like, you did not get your teeth dirty, but yet you brush them anyway, because we know twice a day, every single day, it just keeps the hygiene at such a high level where nothing bad happens. We always empty the lint trap in the dryer because we know it's impossible to do a load of laundry without creating lint. So we always empty it. We don't wait till the dryer catches on fire because of the lint trap. We empty it every load or two. So I love the fact that you're in the world of the inner work and your peace and your own emotions and stress and things like that, looking at it through the lens of normal hygiene, because if we wait till shit hits the fan before we do something about it, then it's too late. Like, we don't wait till we need a root canal to start brushing our teeth. You know, I think it's very much the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also this draws upon like your ability to be resilient when it comes to adversity. So we're talking strictly about my weight loss journey, but I've been through a lot in life, a lot of hard situations, as we all have. Everybody goes through their own things. But so I went through a really nasty custody battle with my son's mom about a year and a half ago. I mean, it finalized about a year ago. But, people ask me, is like, how did you do that? Because it took so much, emotional resilience, mental fortitude, financial resources, money's constantly going out. I spent $40,000 in 6 months. It's like so much stress, and people are like, depression, like traumatic experience. And people are like, how did you handle that. I couldn't do that. And how did you go through that? And it's like, because I had this routine of keeping my stress low. Like I had faith that it would all work out. I believed in myself to get through the situation. And I implemented, stress relief strategies all throughout that time. So I wasn't constantly in that fight or flight mode, even though it did get activated a lot. And there will be times in your life where you go through heavy shit that's really hard, but you have to make sure that you're bringing yourself back down to earth, that you're, doing things that are bringing you that stress relief, And so I think that can totally be related to, this weight loss journey that people want to go through. It's like, if you are constantly stressed out and you're like letting the scale dictate your happiness every morning, whether or not it's going down, I mean, you're not going to be in a good place. And that's what leads to, when your mind is off track and you're highly stressed, that's what leads to the binge eating, the emotional eating, the sabotage that we talk about, right?
Sure. I mean, you won't make it to your results, right? Like some every now and then you'll see someone who lives in that state get their results, but they never keep them. But I see most people who live in that state and stay there, their brain doesn't let them get to the result. They just don't make it. We have this organ in our brain, like people who listen to the podcast and watch the YouTube channel know my training on this a lot or really well, but it's the reticular activating system. Like when your headspace is off, your RAS kicks in and will straight up try to ruin your life. It will hide opportunity. It will hide wins. It will hide the data to validate you winning. And it will only highlight and show data that you're a failure. It's never going to work, and to validate your shitty belief systems, which is why most people who have their headspace off, never make it. But then every now and then one or two slips through the cracks and they have their goal for fucking 2 months and then they lose it all. But that's why I wanted to have you talking about this, because very few people can say, yeah, I've kept my weight off for 17 fucking years. That's insane, bro. So, along those lines though, I'm curious. So for you, where do you see most people who have a lot of weight to lose go wrong? Like what are some like the hey, here's where everyone goes wrong handbook? Like what would be a few things on that list?
I mean, the worst thing that you can do is give up, right? Like that's where, like I always say, like if you don't give up, like you might not reach, because like as humans, right, we are impatient, and so we want things to happen a lot faster than they actually do, right? But I always say, if you don't give up, you'll eventually get to that destination. So it's like constantly picking yourself up when you fall down. Like it's not about how many times you fall down, it's about how many times you get back up and keep fighting. And so I think that is huge. And in terms of like very strategic, I would say really buying into tracking food. I think that's like the most important. I always tell clients, like that's the most important foundational skill that you can cultivate if you want to lose a lot of weight, And so I think anytime we waver on that, like obviously we talk about with the holidays, there's going to be days where you don't track everything. You're not going to be able to be approximate, right? But I think a big problem that people can fall into is letting one day throw them off, and then I'm just not going to log for a while or whatever. It's like not getting back to that foundational skill, because that's really, I mean, the foundational skills, as I mentioned earlier, logging your food every day and moving your body. Like those are the two things that are going to lead you to that, that big weight loss goal.
Without a doubt. I want to go back to what you were talking about when you said just not giving up. I think that's such an overlooked piece, because so many people, number one, do give up. But especially most people do this, but especially like I see in so much of the extreme weight loss cases where they give up before they even get started, because out the gate, they sabotage. They have a thought of, I think I want to change my life. It's not very practical. Like they don't even get to day one and they give up, right? They don't even complete 24 hours. But when you said, this is one thing I think that no one talks about enough, and I take responsibility for that as well. I don't talk about it enough. Under the category of not giving up, I can't think of a single case of, we'll just say achievement in general, weight loss, business, money, success, whatever, marriage, it doesn't matter, who is relentless and will not give up. And every day they just go, I'm going to do my best and I won't give up. That person will every time find success in whatever it is. I don't know a single person who busted their ass every day, worked their ass off, did their best for years and did not find the thing they were looking for. It always takes longer than what they think, but eventually they get off the ground. But like that, I don't know a single person who went to their grave. Yep, I worked my ass off for the last 20, 30 years and it didn't work. I don't know a single person. Like every person, even in business, like Like Andy Frisella, for example, is one of the favorite people I learned like to study business and stuff. Andy didn't, in part of his stories, he didn't make over, he was building his business with his supplement stores. And for the first 10 years in business, he didn't make any money. He said, in 10 years in business, he made a total of 50 grand. Not a year, not 50K a year, 50 grand in 10 years of revenue, and $50,000 in total revenue, gross, not net, in over the course of 10 years, which means no more than a little over $500 a month for 10 years straight. But in his case, he talks about, I just didn't give up and I knew one day it would happen. And then now he's a fucking billionaire, right? But if we look at cases where people go, oh, it didn't work, there are always people who gave up. No one went to their grave and said, I busted my ass for my entire life and I never got what I wanted. No one does that. People give up. I think that's something that no one talks about enough.
Yeah, I agree. And it just ties so beautifully into what you were saying earlier. Why do people give up? It's because they let negativity win. They let the negative thoughts in their mind take over their foundation, and then their behaviors are reflecting upon those negative thoughts. And one thing I was going to bring up earlier, like you were mentioning the RIS, it's like there's a really good book out there called Hardwiring Happiness that is really, and multiple books talk about this, but it really emphasizes the point that our brains, because of the way, like just the way physiology works, the way psychology works, the way that we were brought up as humans, right? In our early ancestors, think to those days, right? We were created this way for a reason back then that doesn't serve us anymore today, but our brain is
really good.
Our brain is really in tune with negative things. And so our brain highlights all the negative things while we gloss over positive things. So it talks about in this book, like if one bad thing happens in your day, it's like the worst possible day ever. Now you have a negative mindset the rest of the day, right? But all these good things happen, but it's like, no, that doesn't matter because one bad thing happened, right? So it's like, your brain is programmed to focus on negative things and not positive things. So you have to consciously focus on those positive things. And I think that's why journaling is so powerful, especially if someone's having a lot of mindset issues. I talk about, gratitude journaling and affirmations about the identity that you want, right? Like those are the positive things that you have to consciously put into your brain, because they're not just gonna, it's not just gonna pop up like negative things do. So you have to really fight that.
Agreed. Well, and that's the thing. I think right around now in this kind of conversation, there's a lot of people who go, all right, they're just talking about like bullshit, be positive stuff. But like, it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. Because when people give up before they get started, or just give up in general, it's not just because like they part of the letting negativity get in. But I think people need to understand what exactly is happening. They got sold a belief. They got we've all been like purchased something we regret purchasing. It's like, man, that salesperson sold me on this. Fuck, I got fucked. They sold me on this thing and it's not what I thought it was, but they got sold. Well, so many people who are struggling or who quit and give up, they were sold a false narrative. They were sold a bullshit story. I'll never make it. Who fucking sold you that story? Someone literally sold you this entire picture of this is what your life is going to look like right now. That they're not going to make it. They're going to fall off. It's not even worth it. They're worthless. That is a story. That's just a story. This is one of the biggest things I've ever gotten from Kyle whenever I've absorbed his content and the relationship we have or have built and stuff like that, where that's just a story. Someone just sold it to you, who at some point, probably when you were defenseless, someone sold you this story, this narrative that you're not good enough. You're not worthy. You're not the kind of person who does that, right? It goes back to labeling. They sold you this label in the story, but so many people imprison themselves and go, oh no, I'm not supposed to be happy. I'm not supposed to make it. I probably won't. Statistics show that I'm not going to make it. Oh, I'm too far gone. That is just bullshit stories that just aren't true. But most people fall for that hook, line, and sinker, and it's not true whatsoever. What would happen if we've built the narrative? Like, what if you could pick the story, right? It's almost like a lucid dream. Like you get to pick the story. You get to write the play. You know what I mean? And it's the same kind of thing, but most people are sold this story over here on the one side that's just not serving them.
I completely agree.
So for you, I think this is where a lot of people also go wrong. A lot of people treat fat loss different losing 20 pounds versus like 120 pounds. For you, obviously there's a level of differences, but I don't think there's as many as people think. I'd love to hear you talk about like a lot of people will go, oh no, I have to do this differently because I've got a lot more weight to lose. You know, talking from a 20-pound loss to 120. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's bullshit. I mean, I think it's the same strategies apply, right? Same strategies apply whether you want to lose 20 or 120. It's just probably going to take longer if you have 120 to lose.
Yeah. Few more maintenance periods, a little bit more patience. I think I'm curious your thoughts on this. I think a perspective shift or a reframe a lot of people need to have is they just have 1 pound to lose X many times, right? If I have 20 pounds, if I want to lose 20 pounds, I don't have to lose 20 pounds. I've got to lose 1 pound 20 times because we don't treat it different. If you have 120 pounds to lose, I'll get flack on with this online. I don't think you should be losing weight at a rapid rate. Right? A lot of people will say, oh, I've got more weight to lose, so I should be able to lose 5 pounds a week. But my thing is, no, that's the bullshit thinking that keeps you yo-yo dieting, because for you to lose 5 pounds in a week, you've got to starve yourself even more. You've got to restrict, you've got to do all this stuff. So my thing is you don't have 120 to lose. You have 1 pound to lose 120 times, because this also makes it easy to celebrate wins. You lose your first pound. Holy fuck, I did it. This is all I have to do. I just have to keep doing what I just did. And it becomes simple and it becomes a game and not this monument you have to tackle.
Yeah, I like that you said that. And you know, one thing that comes up is like, well, you know, I think the biggest thing to recognize is like setting, because I was thinking about this earlier, setting like small tangible goals instead of and they were sold that story. That's what I was thinking of. They were sold that story by diet culture, right? And by like all these bullshit fad diets out there and all this,
or like
crap.
Mom or someone who's struggled themselves.
Yeah. Or someone that maybe lost some weight but didn't really know what the fuck they were doing and then gained it back. Well, this person did this and lost this, but then it's like, yeah, they probably gained it back too. You're not looking at the whole story. But I'm a big fan of setting small, tangible goals. I like what you said with the 1 pound. And one thing that I've always done is like, the 5, kind of like looking at the 5 pound increments as well, right? Because a lot of times if you lose 5 pounds, you're going to start to notice changes in your body. You're definitely going to see a difference in measurements, right? So it's like, I like to think of any weight loss goal, chunking it off by like 5 pounds. And I think even like you said, even the 1 pound, because when you lose that 1 pound and you see that you've done it, well, now it's not like,
it's believable.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like I'm always going to be this weight. I can't lose weight. Well, you just lost a fucking pound. So just keep doing what you were doing and you're going to continue to lose it. Right. And me and Abby talked about this on a live in the group, was like, you know, you can really, expectations can really lead us to
it's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to have realistic expectations. It's when you have expectations of, I should lose X by X date. That's when you set yourself up for failure, right? Because like you and I have just talked about, it's like, it's probably going to take you longer to get to your goal than you would like, right?
Yeah, well, and here's the, no, without a doubt, because here's my thing. People are okay with outcomes they don't want if they expect that to happen. Case in point, do you like water?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you like, what's another drink that you enjoy drinking? That's definitely not water.
Coffee.
Okay, perfect. Because they're arguably polar opposites taste-wise.
Yeah.
Right? If you are expecting to drink, you like coffee, you like water. If you look to the left to talk to your son and you reach to the right to grab your water and you take a big swig of coffee, you're repulsed. Because you're like, whoa, what the? No. You like coffee, but it's not what you expected. Or vice versa. If you look to talk to your son to the left and reach to the right and grab your coffee and you're expecting hot, bitter, beautiful coffee and you get a swig of cold water, you're repelled. You're like, what the fuck? Oh, it's just water. Because you expected one and got the other. Or even a really morbid example, and this happened to us a couple of years ago in my family. So we had our grandma and grandpa. We were very close. My grandfather was in very ill health. But we all know what it's like to expect someone to pass away, right? You're as ready for it as you can be. Everyone knew grandpa was going to be going probably within the next month or two. Like, it's time. We totally expected it, prepared ourselves for it. Grandma died out of nowhere, right? We expected grandpa to go. Not that we forgot about grandma, but grandma was in fine health. She was fine. Grandpa was the one in the hospital every other week, not being able to breathe, all these issues. And then out of nowhere, my grandma went in for a very routine surgery and her heart just never came back on. Like, her heart just stopped.
Wow.
On the table. And we're all like, oh, holy shit. That one was a little bit harder to process. And now, short because they were like 1,000 years old, they grew up together. It was grandpa died shortly after, because you see that happen with a lot of really elderly couples. One dies and the other like goes the next couple days.
Yep.
Well, we totally expected grandpa to die and we were like more ready for it. Grandma caught us all off guard. We were like, what? Grandma died? We expected grandpa, and even death is hard no matter what, but we expected grandpa to die. We did not expect grandma to die. Grandma's was a little bit harder to wrap our heads around than grandpa, because we expected one and not the other. So we can actually go through a lot of shit, and all the way down to suffering. Not that we should be suffering during weight loss, but we can go through situations we don't like if we're expecting to go through it. We're okay with waiting a long time if we're expecting to wait a long time. But if you've been sold a narrative that weight loss is supposed to be fast and it's slow, I don't blame you for being pissed. This is why whenever we coach people, we lay out the expectations so fucking black and white. There's no issue around that, because again, it's not the problem that weight loss is slow or it's tedious or it's monotonous or it's boring. It's the fact that people think it's not going to be that.
Absolutely. And, doing this coaching thing for quite a while now, it's like one of the things that I'd love to ask anyone who comes to me and says, so like, here's a real world example, right? Where someone is like, do you think I can lose 15 pounds in 3 months? And I'll say, well, I can't guarantee that, but what I can guarantee is if you put in the work, you focus on the behaviors and actions that are going to ultimately lead to that result, you will eventually get to the result, but I can't put a timeline on it. However, then I say, let me ask you this. If you lost 11 pounds in 3 months, would you be excited about that? Well, yeah, of course. So then it's like, well, why are you trying to lose X amount by X date? It's like you can't guarantee how much weight you're going to lose in a time frame. But if you're headed in that right direction, you got to be happy about that. You got to celebrate that,
Mm-hmm. But the problem is, though, they would be down, though. That same person, if we got honest with them and they hit their 3-month mark and they weren't down 15, they're like, oh, I'm only down 11 pounds. Right? We're all like mentally wired to do this, right? Like, we all do it, right? But the thing is, when we put a timeline on it, like especially with extreme weight loss or weight loss in general, though, we then instantly see through the lens of lack. It goes back. Then you're in fight or flight again. You're in like, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time. Oh my gosh, then you're not safe to make results anymore. Excuse me. But when we go, oh, I should lose this much by this timeline. And then what happens because weight loss isn't linear. Let's say you have a rough week. Let's say you overate 1 or 2 times, whatever the case is. Well, now you're off. Well, if you're like, okay, I should lose a pound a week every single week, and by the end of the year, I'll lose 52 pounds. Oh shit, I haven't lost any weight the first 2 weeks. Fuck, now I've got to lose 52 pounds in less than a year. Oh my gosh, what happened? Oh my gosh, the sales spiked. Oh my God, I'm so behind. Now I've got to go into a bigger deficit and then they freak out. Again, goes right back to fight or flight. Now you're not looking for opportunity to succeed. Now you're just trying to be in self-preservation, and your RAS shows you ways to sabotage. And that's why the last thing you want to do for those listening is to put this rigid timeline. This is why the guy hardly ever talks about fitness stuff. He talks about like business and sales and things like that. But he talks about this beautifully in business, and I think it applies here. His name's Alex Hormozi. I know, Steven, you know who Alex is. Well, Alex talks about like, why don't we quit setting outcome-based goals? Because we never can control an outcome, but we can always control our actions. So instead of getting excited about, oh, I lost the weight, I made the money, I got the thing. What if we just set our goals based around, instead of the outcome, the action, because you can always control your actions. And then if you don't get the goal, it's now your fault, because you're like, well, people get excited about the goal, but then because it doesn't go their way, they give up on the goal. But if we go, that's the goal, but then now our true goal is, all right, that means I have to eat in a calorie deficit every day. This means I need to hit the gym 3 days this week. This means I need to do journaling every single day. Well, that's the goal now, is your actions, because then ironically actions lead to outcomes. But I think people forget about it and get too hyperfixated on the outcomes and not the actions.
100%. And so one thing that I do strategically myself, and that I encourage clients to do when they struggle is, and this is exactly what we're talking about with actions and behaviors and habits, is like, so I have this really weird thing that I haven't talked about a lot through my journey with emotional eating and binge eating. It's like something developed over the years where I've actually talked to clients who have struggled with this. It's been kind of fun to walk them through it and help them. But it's like, it's this weird night eating thing, right? Where I'll like wake up in the middle of the night, won't even really be hungry, but I find myself in my pantry like eating something, right?
Right.
And it will and we've all, like, a lot of us have been there, right? And for some people it doesn't become a problem. But what I notice is if I do it once, now I'm more likely to continue down that path unless I get really, really mindful around it. So with that and with tracking my macros, what I do, or, especially calories and protein, what I do, especially if I have a goal to reach or this night eating thing pops up, I start tracking it like a calendar. And so I go in my notes app every single day, and it's like, I call it like no night eating. And if I'm no night eating, then I'm like 1 for 1. And then the next day, if I no night eat, I'm 2 for 2. And I continue to build that momentum. And it's the same with macros, right? And like I always revert back to the 80-20 rule all my years of coaching, right? It's like if 80% of the time you're on point within your calories, and the days that are out of range aren't like astronomically out of range, like you're going to achieve results. And that's really only 24 out of 30 days in a month. So I always think about in that frame, it's like my macros, same thing, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, 3 for 4. Like, oh, had a bad day. I'm 7 for 8 now, but I'm still on track. That bad day didn't throw me off completely. So that's another strategy that you can implement in terms of behaviors and habits and actions for sure.
That's super good. I love that, man. That's because and I think it also helps with the perfectionism side, right? When you know that, like, okay, my goal is to not get below 70%, right? Or if let's say you hit 80-20, it's like, okay, I should probably keep it pretty tight the rest of the month. You know what I mean? Or the rest of the week or whatever the case is. Versus people go, oh, fuck it. But because you don't want to get 0 for 10, 0 for 11, 0 for 12. You know what I mean? So I like that.
And here's the other thing it does, right? There's been times where like if I struggle, say I only did like 20 out of 30 on point with my macros. Well, now I have, concrete evidence that I can't be upset about not achieving a result, because I can go back and say, oh shit, I didn't do that great the last 30 days. But what I can do now, I can exercise that self-compassion, that self-love, and say, I'm going to do better this next 30 days. And then if you do better, you probably are starting to walk down that path of results, right? So that's why I enjoy it.
That's huge. Because again, let's say someone's not doing very good. Let's say they're like 2 for 10, right? They're not doing very good. Well, let's make, instead of next month's goal, 10 for 10, let's go 4 for 10. Right? This is one of the things my mentor right now has really talked to me about, is if I have like, let's say if my goal is this, my natural inclination personally is I want to like quadruple that, right? I'm like 100% improvement or nothing, right? That's where I naturally want to live at. And he was the first one that's like, nah, Jared, let's just go to 20%. Cause he's like, cool, you have this high, but then you're going to follow that with a low, versus I would rather see slower, predictable success with you. I would rather you, instead of going from like, you're here right now, then the next 2 months you're at 100% increase, because that's not sustainable to keep that rate up. I would rather see you do 25% increase. And I go, or 25% better than you did the last month. And then for there, the next quarter, 25% more. He goes, instead of you trying to have like 100% on 100%, that's not scalable. That's not practical. But I think clients need to look at it through the same lens. We would rather see someone get slower, more sustainable, more boring and predictable results than this fucking roller coaster of them going horrible, fantastic, back to horrible again.
Absolutely. And I think that's where coaching plays such a role, right? It's like, because going back to the person that expects to lose 15 pounds in 3 months, but they lost 11. Well, we're able to really reframe that with them, right? As they work on it themselves. Like, no, like, you lost 11 pounds in 3 months. Like, you're fucking killing it. You're on your way to your goal. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with incremental progress. It's like if this month was a little bit better than last month in terms of the habits, then like you're headed in the right direction, even if it's not quite showing up yet with the outcome. And that's why, again, I love what you said that you brought up with Alex, is like, I'm a big fan of detaching from outcome goals and just having that goal be like what I call like your North Star. Like, that's what guides you. So if that's your North Star, your behaviors, your actions should be in alignment with that, right?
Yeah. It's actually why I have my newest tattoos. I have on, for those that are watching the camera, I have two new tattoos on my wrist are action and ambition. Or I'm sorry, not action and ambition, ambition and equanimity. Because for me, it's the same thing. Like, my ambition is my North Star. It's like, that's what I'm wanting to do. But then the equanimity side is I have to be emotionally neutral, very calm, and not like detaching from outcomes, because that's a beautiful way of putting it. Like, the ambition is the North Star, but you're not married to that outcome, because now you're desperate and chasing, which means you're not equanimous, where you're not neutral emotionally. So it's a big deal. So I love that you brought that up, man, dude. This has been so good. I know we're already about an hour and it just fucking flew by. Any final thoughts on people for the people listening to this who have, let's say, a lot of weight to lose, let's say, 80 pounds, 100 pounds, 120 pounds. And they're just like, I'm not sure where to go from here, other than the logical answer, which is work with a coach, work with, they may listen to this and go, I would love, Steven's been there. I would love to work with someone who's lost the weight themselves. And if you're listening to this and you want to apply for coaching, and especially even with Steven, there'll be a link below where you can schedule a call to apply for coaching. That way we can see if you're a good fit. And then we incentivize the podcast listeners too. But other than the no brainer, which is apply for coaching, what are some like last final thoughts on people, like where to go from here?
Yeah, I think the key is going to be start with identity, right? So start with that foundation of self-love, self-compassion, cultivating that if you don't have that, right? Doing the inner work to cultivate that, because you have to cultivate that in order to cultivate belief in self, in order to generate a new identity, because you have to believe that you can change your identity, and that you can become a new person, and you can make that happen in a very short amount of time if you really apply yourself to that work. So I really think, like, for someone that has a lot of weight to lose, change that identity. Think about who you want to become and what does that person do, right? Or what did that person do to achieve that result? Like, looking back on my story, what did I do? What did I have to change in order to achieve that result?
That's so good, dude. That's so good. Awesome, brother, man. Well, this has been fucking great. I appreciate you. Thanks for doing this, and we will talk soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
And we are back. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. If you stuck around for the whole thing, I know you got a lot of value out of this. And if you did, it would mean a ton to me if you left me a review wherever you're listening to this on, or subscribed to the channel, or shared it with a friend. That's my one ask. Now, after having listened to this, if you would like to work with Steven, whether you have just 20 pounds to lose, or if you are in the boat of having quite a bit of weight to lose, and you want to work with someone who gets it, who's had that experience firsthand, but also has been on the other side and knows how to coach that, absolutely apply for coaching. I'll leave a link below where you can go straight to a calendar. That way we can have a talk with you, make sure that we think this is a good fit. This is why before anyone ever signs up for coaching, no one can just go and sign up. We don't take anyone just with a credit card, because we have to make sure that we learn about you, understand what's going on, and where we actually think and 100% know we can solve your problems. That's the only way you get accepted into the coaching program. And if that's you and you want to get help and you would like to work with Steven, especially after hearing his story, I will leave a link below, and then you can actually request to work with Steven. At the time of recording this, Steven does have some slots open on his roster personally, so you can do that. But otherwise, I appreciate you being here. Be sure and check out the other resources. If you don't have a home base and you don't have somewhere where you can go to consistently and get the help you need from a great community, you can join my Fat Loss Simplified Facebook community. It's totally free, and it's going to help get you where you need to be if you don't have anywhere else. If you don't have a home base where you're around other people who are like-minded, where you're not getting the help, where you can't ask questions, and where you aren't getting supported, you really want to join my Fat Loss Simplified community, because there's no place like it on the internet, in my opinion. But I'm biased because it's my group. But I've been in the industry a long time, and I think it's a special place. If you're listening to this and you have no idea where to start, and you're just like, I don't even fucking know what way is up at this point, go check out my free fat loss course. It's in the description as well. It's called the Fat Loss Checklist. It's basically my simplified version on how to lose weight without the bullshit. So definitely check that out. My other socials are down there as well if you are not following me there. But otherwise, I appreciate the fuck out of you. Thank you for being here. I will talk to you next time.